The hushed tension in the Sterling Industries boardroom was palpable, a silent storm brewing. Every eye was fixed on the grand entrance as the formidable widow, Vivian Sterling, swept in. But it wasn't her regal bearing that stole their breath, it was the unassuming gardener trailing behind her, his worn work gloves still clinging to his hands. The room, a monument to polished mahogany and hushed deals, fell into a stunned silence. Executives, accustomed to the crisp rustle of tailored suits and the clink of crystal, were confronted with the sight of Elias, a man whose hands bore the marks of soil and sun, not stock options. "Mrs. Sterling," stammered Arthur Finch, the head of acquisitions, his practiced smile faltering, "we weren't expecting." Vivian silenced him with a mere lift of her hand, her gaze unwavering. "I invited him." Elias, his posture rigid with discomfort, kept his eyes fixed on the intricate pattern of the Persian rug. He was a stranger in a world of power and privilege, a misplaced piece in a high-stakes puzzle. The air crackled with unspoken questions. This was a meeting of titans, a conclave of wealth and influence, where fortunes were won and lost with the flick of a pen. What possible reason could there be for a gardener's presence? Vivian took her seat at the head of the table, her eyes sweeping across the sea of bewildered faces. "I understand your confusion," she said, her voice a low, resonant melody. "But trust me, you'll soon understand." Elias felt the weight of a dozen scrutinizing stares. He was used to the quiet solitude of the gardens, the rustle of leaves his only audience. Now, he was a spectacle, a curiosity, a man out of place. He wanted to vanish, to melt back into the anonymity he knew so well. "Some of you," Vivian began, her gaze unwavering, "may wonder why I've asked Elias to join us." She paused, letting the tension build. "Let me tell you a story." A few weeks prior, Vivian had found herself wandering through the company's greenhouse, a hidden oasis amidst the corporate jungle. She'd overheard a conversation, not about flowers or soil, but about market trends and investment strategies. Intrigued, she'd listened. The voice was calm, insightful, and surprisingly knowledgeable. It was Elias, sharing his observations with a fellow gardener. "The tech sector is volatile right now," he'd said, his voice measured. "But look at the renewable energy market. It's poised for significant growth. The recent policy changes have created a fertile ground for investment." Vivian had been captivated. He spoke with a clarity and understanding that far surpassed the jargon-filled pronouncements of her financial advisors. She'd lingered, listening as he dissected market fluctuations and identified hidden opportunities. It wasn't theory, she later explained to the board. It was practical, insightful, and grounded in real-world observations. She'd interrupted their conversation, her voice cutting through the quiet hum of the greenhouse. "Where did you learn all this?" she'd asked. Elias had hesitated, his face flushing. "My grandfather," he'd said. "He was a small-time investor. He taught me everything he knew." Vivian had made her decision then and there. "I want you to come to a meeting," she'd said. "Just listen, and if I ask, answer honestly." And so, Elias found himself in the lion's den, a lamb among wolves, his presence a silent challenge to the established order. The silence in the boardroom was thick, a suffocating blanket. No one dared to break the tension. "Mrs. Sterling," began a senior director, his voice laced with thinly veiled condescension, "while we appreciate your gesture, I'm sure we all agree that this meeting is about critical financial decisions." Vivian's smile was cool and sharp. "Indeed," she said. "And Elias is here to contribute to those decisions." A wave of incredulity swept through the room. With all due respect, interjected the CFO, I fail to see how a gardener can offer relevant insight into our financial strategies. That's interesting, Vivian replied, her voice laced with irony, because last week, when I overheard Elias discussing market trends, he made more sense than half the presentations I've sat through in this room. The room fell silent. Elias has a unique perspective, she continued, one that I believe could be invaluable. And given the current state of our portfolio, we need all the fresh perspectives we can get. Very well, said the director, his voice tight. Then by all means, enlighten us. The spotlight was on Elias. He felt the weight of their expectations, their skepticism, their unspoken disdain. But he also felt a flicker of something else, a quiet determination. You're concerned about the underperforming assets, he said, his voice surprisingly steady. But you're looking at them the wrong way. He went on to dissect their investment strategies, pointing out flaws